What happened during the night shift at a steel mill in Indiana? A man who should not have survived, protected by someone no one managed to see? A miracle of the Virgin Mary that left even the paramedic speechless. But before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. I would love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. You know that kind of man who seems to be made of steel? As if the years working with molten metal and heavy machinery had hardened not only his hands, but also his heart. Marcus Sullivan was that man, 38 years old, 15 of those working at the same steel mill in Indiana, shift supervisor. The man everyone respected, but nobody really liked, because Marcus wasn't there to make friends. He was there to do his job, collect his paycheck, and go home. A one-bedroom apartment on the older side of town, always clean, always empty, always far too quiet. Marcus had been divorced for 3 years. It wasn't dramatic. There were no shouting matches. Jennifer simply looked at him one day and said, "I can't keep living with a ghost." He tried to argue, tried to say that he worked hard to give her and the boys a good life. But Jennifer just shook her head. The boys, Kyle, 15, and Brandon, 12, stayed with their mother, as they should. Marcus saw them every 2 weeks, tense meetups in restaurants where he didn't know what to say, and they didn't know what to ask. Kyle barely looked at him now, spent the visits with headphones on, scrolling on his phone. Brandon still tried to talk sometimes, but even he was starting to give up. "Dad, did you watch the game yesterday?" "No, son, I was working." "Oh, okay." Silence. It was always like that. At the plant, Marcus was different. Efficient, direct. He knew exactly what to do and when to do it. The operators respected him because he never asked for anything he couldn't do himself. He had worked in every section of that plant, but he also had a reputation for being cold. Tommy, one of the younger operators, had made a mistake 3 months earlier, nothing serious. He forgot to check the pressure before releasing a valve. It could have caused a major problem, but Marcus caught it in time. "Sorry, Marcus, I swear I don't want excuses. I want you to pay attention. I know it's just that my mom is sick and we all have problems, Tommy. Leave them at the door when you walk in here. Understood?" Tommy nodded, face red with embarrassment. The other operators heard the conversation. No one said anything, but Marcus saw the looks. He knew what they thought of him. He didn't care. Or at least, he pretended not to care. Friday, October 18th, Marcus arrived for the night shift at 10. The factory never stopped. 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, metal being melted, shaped, cooled. The cycle never ended. The night shift was always quieter. Fewer supervisors, less pressure. Just the constant work and the deafening noise of the machines. Marcus did his initial round, checked the pressure gauges on the furnaces, verified the temperatures, spoke with each operator, making sure they knew what they were doing. Everything normal. Around 12:30, Marcus was in Section 3. That was where the main furnaces were, giant structures of metal and concrete where steel was melted at temperatures that could turn flesh to ash in seconds. He was checking the temperature logs when he felt it. A smell. Marcus stopped. He frowned. Roses. Impossible. The factory always smelled like hot metal, machine oil, sweat, smoke, always. It never changed. That was the scent of the place. But there, in that moment, in the middle of Section 3, Marcus was smelling roses. Fresh roses. As if someone had just cut a bouquet and held it right under his nose. He looked around. No one nearby. The closest operator was about 20 meters away, back turned, focused on his station. Marcus shook his head. Exhaustion. It had to be. He'd been working 6 days a week for months, but the smell didn't go away. It grew stronger. And that was when Marcus saw her, a woman, standing about 5 meters from him in the middle of Section 3 of a steel plant. At 12:37 a.m., wearing a long blue dress. Marcus's brain tried to process what he was seeing. Someone had entered a restricted area. How had she gotten past security? Why had no one stopped her? "Ma'am," he began to say, taking a step toward her. "You can't be here. It's—" She looked at him, and Marcus completely forgot what he was going to say. It wasn't her face. Although it was beautiful, serene, young, yet somehow ancient. No, it was the eyes. Eyes that seemed to see through him, through all the armor he had built over 38 years of life, through the anger, the bitterness, the loneliness he hid so well. Eyes full of compassion. No one looked at Marcus like that. No one had seen him that way in years. The woman didn't say anything. She simply raised her arm and pointed to the left, toward the side wall of the section. Marcus turned his head automatically, looking where she was pointing. There was nothing there, just the concrete wall, a pile of old materials, nothing important. He looked back at the woman to ask what she meant, but something in her expression, urgency, fear, made Marcus move. Without thinking, without questioning, he ran in the direction she had pointed. 5 steps, 10, 15, and then the world exploded. The sound came first, a blast so loud Marcus felt it in his bones. Then the wave of heat, then the shock that threw him against the concrete wall. Furnace number 2 had exploded. It shouldn't have been possible, but some impossible combination of mechanical failures had created the perfect scenario for disaster, and then everything collapsed. Tons of metal, beams, platforms, all crashing down like dominoes, exactly where Marcus had been 15 seconds earlier. He was on the ground, back against the side wall, ears ringing, vision blurred by dust and smoke. He tried to stand. His legs didn't respond properly. He managed to get to his knees, and he saw the spot where he had been checking the records, where he would have remained if he hadn't run. It was completely destroyed, buried under twisted metal debris, beams that must have weighed tons, structures that would have crushed anyone in their path. Marcus tried to process it. He had been there. He was alive now. Between those two facts, there was— what? The woman. He turned his head quickly, searching for her. Nothing. Section 3 was in complete chaos. Alarms blaring. Emergency lights flashing, operators shouting, people running. But there was no woman in a blue dress. "Marcus!" Tommy was running toward him, face pale with shock. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Marcus shook his head, still trying to orient himself. "The woman," he managed to say. "There's a woman here." Tommy looked around. "What woman? There's no one here but us." "She was. She warned me." Marcus tried to explain, but the words didn't make sense even to him. "Did you hit your head? Stay still. They've already called the paramedics." The next few minutes were a blur. More people arriving. Someone draping a thermal blanket over his shoulders. Questions he couldn't quite answer properly. And then the paramedics arrived. 2 men in uniform. The older one knelt in front of Marcus. "My name is James." "Can you hear me clearly?" Marcus nodded. "I'm going to ask you a few questions. Do you know what day it is?" "Friday, October 18th. "Do you know where you are?" "Section 3, steel plant." James nodded, satisfied. He began examining Marcus, checked his eyes with a flashlight, felt along his skull searching for injuries, checked his arms, his ribs. "You're very lucky," James said finally. "A few scrapes. You'll have bruises tomorrow. But nothing broken, nothing serious." "The woman," Marcus said again. "She saved me." James exchanged a look with his younger partner. "What woman?" "She was here, wearing a blue dress. She showed me where to go. Warned me." James looked around slowly, at the wreckage, at the other workers, at the completely empty spot where no woman in a blue dress could possibly have been. "Marcus," he said gently, "there was no one here except the workers. You were the only one in the impact zone." "I saw her," Marcus insisted. But even his own voice lacked conviction now. "They convinced him to go to the hospital. Standard protocol after an accident like that. Marcus went because it was easier than arguing. At the hospital, more tests. Everything normal. The ER doctor was genuinely impressed. Marcus was discharged at 5 in the morning, took an Uber back to the apartment. The sun was starting to rise. Indiana in the fall. Cold air cutting through his thin jacket. Inside the apartment, Marcus went straight to the bathroom, took off the clothes covered in dust and soot, got into the shower, hot water. He stayed there for 40 minutes. When he got out, he wrapped a towel around his waist and stood in front of the fogged mirror, wiped the steam away with his hand, looked at his reflection, a man who shouldn't have survived. Marcus touched his own face, as if checking whether he was real, and that's when it broke. Something inside him, that carefully constructed structure of control and distance, simply collapsed. He braced himself against the sink. He had seen her, the woman in the blue dress, as clearly as he saw his own reflection now. She had pointed, he had run, and because of that, he was alive. So what had he seen? Marcus didn't believe in God, didn't believe in miracles, didn't believe in anything he couldn't touch, see, measure. But he had smelled roses, impossible yet real. He had seen the woman, impossible yet real. He was alive, against all odds, alive. For the first time in years, maybe decades, Marcus Sullivan didn't know what to think. The weekend passed in a strange haze. The factory called Saturday morning. They were giving him a paid week off. Marcus agreed to everything on autopilot. He spent Saturday trying to sleep. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the explosion, heard the blast, felt the heat. But he also saw the woman. That blue dress, those eyes. Sunday morning, Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He called Jennifer. She answered on the third ring. Cautious voice. "Marcus? Are you okay?" "Everything," he said, realizing how strange it was to talk to her like this without a practical reason. "I just wanted to know how you're doing." Silence on the other end. "Marcus, what happened?" "Nothing. Can I talk to the boys?" "They're still sleeping. It's 8 a.m. on a Sunday." "Oh, right." More silence. "Marcus, are you sure you're okay? You sound different." He almost laughed. Different, if she only knew. "There was an accident at the factory on Friday. I'm fine, but—" He hesitated. "It made me think about the boys, about things." Jennifer sighed on the other end of the line, not a sigh of irritation. Something softer. Worry, maybe. "Do you want to come over for lunch today?" Marcus blinked, surprised. "Are you sure? The boys will be happy to see you. And I think we need to talk." He arrived at noon, the house that used to be his, too, a 2-story house in a nice neighborhood, well-kept lawn, Brandon's bike leaning against the garage. Jennifer opened the door. She was wearing that gray sweater he always liked. Hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Hi." "Hi." They stood there for a moment, awkwardly. Then Jennifer stepped aside, letting him in. "The boys are in the living room. Kyle is... well, you know how he is." Marcus walked into the room. Kyle was on the couch, headphones on, playing something on his phone. Brandon was on the floor, building something with Lego. "Hey, guys." Brandon looked up and smiled. "Dad, you came." Kyle removed one headphone, looked at Marcus, didn't smile but gave a small nod. Progress. Lunch was different. Normally, when Marcus visited, there was this tension. Everyone trying to fill the silence, everyone uncomfortable. But today Marcus asked questions, actually listened to the answers. After lunch, Jennifer made coffee. The boys went back to their rooms. "You're different," Jennifer said, sitting at the kitchen table with him. Marcus looked at the coffee in front of him, steam rising slowly. There was an explosion, one of the furnaces. The structure collapsed. Jennifer went pale. "My God, you—" "I'm fine. Not even a scratch, actually." He paused. "But I should have died, Jennifer. I was right in the center. There was no way to survive. But you did survive. Because I ran. At the last second, I ran to the side. Luck. Marcus slowly shook his head. It wasn't luck. And then he told her. About the smell of roses, about the woman in the blue dress, about how she pointed, about how he simply obeyed. Jennifer listened in silence. When he finished, she stayed quiet for a long moment. You think it was... What? The Virgin Mary? I don't know what it was. I don't believe in that stuff. You know that. But you saw. I did. Jennifer reached her hand across the table. Hesitant. Marcus looked at her hand, then took it. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. I don't know how to be different. I've spent so long being the way I was that... Then, maybe, Jennifer said softly, maybe that's what the Virgin Mary was showing you. Not just where to run to save your life, but how to live. The words hung in the air between them. Marcus went back to his apartment that afternoon with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, maybe. Tuesday morning he woke up early out of habit, made coffee, sat at the small kitchen table, and realized he had nothing to do. For the first time in 15 years, he had time. On Wednesday, Marcus did something impulsive. He grabbed the car and drove, with no specific destination, just drove. He ended up in a part of the city he hadn't visited in years, the oldest neighborhood, where he had grown up. He drove past the elementary school he'd attended, now renovated, painted different colors, drove past the house he had lived in until he was 18. Someone new lived there. They had put up a new fence. And then he saw the church. He hadn't planned to stop, but he saw the church and stopped. The parking lot was nearly empty. Marcus sat in the car for 10 minutes, staring at the old stone building. His mother used to take him there when he was a child, every Sunday. She prayed with such devotion while he squirmed on the hard bench, counting the minutes until he could leave. She died when he was 22. Marcus stopped going to church after that. What kind of God let a good woman like his mother suffer like that? But now, sitting in the parking lot, he thought of the woman in the blue dress, and he got out of the car. The church was empty, silent. Light filtered through the stained glass windows, creating colorful patterns on the floor. Marcus walked slowly down the central aisle. His footsteps echoed faintly. He stopped in front of the altar, looked up. Above the altar, a large statue, the Virgin Mary, blue mantle, outstretched hands. Marcus stood there, staring. It was the same woman. Marcus didn't know how to pray. He had forgotten. The words his mother had taught him were buried under decades of disuse. But he stood there, and he whispered, "Thank you." Just that. 2 words. And Marcus swore that for a second he felt it again. Roses. On Thursday, Kyle called. Marcus was making coffee when his phone rang. He saw the name on the screen and almost dropped the mug. Kyle never called. "Hello? Do you want to come for dinner tomorrow? Here at home?" Mom said it's okay. Marcus felt something warm rise in his throat. I'd love to. Cool, like around 7? I'll be there. After he hung up, Marcus stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the phone in his hand. Kyle had called, his son had called, on his own. On Friday night, Marcus arrived right at 7. Brandon opened the door. Dinner was normal, in the best possible way. Conversations about school, about Brandon's soccer team, about the game Kyle had been playing. And Marcus joined in, made bad jokes that made Brandon laugh and Kyle roll his eyes, but with a small smile. On Monday, Marcus went back to work. Section 3 was still under repairs, but the rest of the factory was running normally. He was assigned to temporarily supervise Section 1. When he arrived, several operators came to greet him, ask how he was, say they were glad he was okay. Days turned into weeks. Marcus settled into a new routine, work. But now he talked to the operators, asked about their lives, listened when they had problems, weekends with the boys, every Saturday. Sometimes he stayed for dinner. Sometimes he visited for just a few hours, but always present, truly present. And Jennifer. They started talking again, for real, about the boys, about life, about mistakes and regrets. "I'm not saying we're getting back together," she said one day, "but I'm happy that you're here, that you're being a father again." "So am I." October turned into November. The air grew colder. The trees lost their leaves. Marcus kept visiting the church from time to time, not every week. But whenever he felt the need, he didn't pray exactly, he still didn't know how, but he sat there, quiet, and somehow it was enough. Section 3 had been completely rebuilt, new structures, new furnaces, updated safety protocols. Marcus asked to do a walkthrough before the shift started, just him. He walked through the rebuilt section. Everything was different, more modern, safer. But he knew exactly where he had been. He could picture it perfectly, the place where the records were kept. Where he would have been when Marcus stopped at that exact spot. He looked around and whispered, "Thank you for showing me the way." There was no answer. He didn't expect one. December arrived cold. The first snow fell on a Thursday morning. Marcus was in his apartment when he woke and saw the flakes falling outside. He made coffee, sat at the table, looked out the window. The apartment didn't feel as empty anymore. He had brought some photos, put Brandon's drawings on the fridge. He even bought a plant. He was trying to keep it alive. His phone rang. "Jennifer. Hey, the boys wanted to know if you'd like to come for Christmas dinner." Marcus smiled. "I'd love to." "And Marcus, I was thinking, maybe after the holidays, we could try, take it slow, see how things go." His heart jumped. "Really? I'd really like that, Jennifer." After he hung up, Marcus sat there for a long time. He thought about how strange life was. How a single night, a single moment could change everything. He had almost died. But instead, he had begun to live. On Christmas, Marcus arrived at Jennifer's house carrying gifts, things the boys really wanted. And Marcus Sullivan, a man who didn't believe in miracles, couldn't deny what had happened. He had seen something impossible, something that saved his life. But more than that, something that taught him how to live again. If it was the Virgin Mary, he would never know for sure. But he knew it was real, and he knew he was grateful. Before we finish, I want to invite you to join our prayer community for the Virgin Mary, a space of faith and hope where people from all over the world come together to pray and share the graces they've received. If you feel in your heart the desire to be part of this chain of prayer, click below and become a member of the channel today. And come pray with us. And look, if you've made it this far to the end of Marcus's story, do one thing for me. Write roses in the comments, the impossible scent that saved a life. I want to see how many hearts this story truly reached. And every time I read roses in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that miracles of the Virgin Mary still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue to bless and protect you and your family. Amen.